Brad Stevens held his end-of-season presser discussing the hottest topics surrounding your Boston Celtics. And before we dive into all of it, I want to know, if you believe in Brad Stevens, show me, go down below and hit that thumbs up icon like today's video. What's going on, Green Teamers? You're watching Celtics Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Tyler Smith. And on today's show, we're going to discuss some major news for Celtics fans as Brad Stevens held his end-of-season press conference discussing all the biggest topics surrounding your Boston Celtics, whether it be injuries, whether it be the offseason, whether it be the coaching staff, whether it be anything that Boston is going to be pursuing over these next few months. Brad Stevens discussed it at his end-of-season presser. So let's get into my 4 biggest takeaways from the conference. And the first is that injuries suck. To be frank with you guys, for the front half of today's show, we're going to be talking about the injuries that have gone on the Boston Celtics roster, and then the back end is going to be more looking ahead and you know, what Boston has in front of them at this point. But injuries do suck, and the biggest one we all know is that guy right there, Jayson Tatum, suffering the torn Achilles in Game 4 against the Knicks. And what we do know about the Jayson Tatum injury is that there are some silver linings to the situation. Brad Stevens did open talking about Tatum with that there's going to be a long road ahead, and there's many steps that he's going to have to take in order to get back out there on the basketball court. But even with this being one of the worst situations you could have as an athlete, tearing your Achilles, there are some positives to look out from it. And we discussed those on a couple of videos ago. But Martin O'Malley, the surgeon that operated on Jayson Tatum's torn Achilles, was ready to operate very, very quickly after the initial tear. Like less than 12 hours after Jayson Tatum went down with the injury, he was already surgically, tied back up and, officially starting his recovery process. So that was awesome news. And Brad Stevens talked about it a little bit right here, detailing the situation. He said the positives, we were 15 minutes away from Dr. O'Malley, who's a terrific surgeon, who has done a number of these, and Celtics team Dr. Anthony Schino was on the phone with him before we left the building on Monday night. And he was out of the MRI and consultation and done with surgery by the time we had an injury report the next day, because there was real benefit to doing it early. So as tough as that injury is, and as tough as what was that night, I thought it was about as good of a transition and about as bleak of a feeling as you could have. And he's completely right, man. For the worst situation that we're facing here, like a all-time durable player in Jayson Tatum, we've gotten the best outcome in the situation. Like, he was operated on very, very quickly, the quickest of any player that I've seen tear their Achilles over the last half decade or so. And that's going to result in good outcomes. Hopefully, with him being 27, having a lot of athleticism left in his career, he's able to come back and have this road to recovery go very, very smoothly. And according to reports that we've heard over the past couple of weeks, Jayson Tatum is using Kevin Durant as a quote-unquote blueprint for his recovery. We know that KD has come back and played at a very, very high level over these last couple of years since tearing his Achilles back in 2019. And yes, maybe some explosiveness is deteriorated a little bit, but he has still been able to put up MVP level numbers. Yeah, no doubt about it. 5 years removed from that Achilles surgery, and at age 36. Hopefully we see the same for JT. Another injury that we faced for Boston is a Jaylen Brown injury, and this was one that it was unbeknownst to us Celtics fans all the way until the season and the series was wrapped up. Jaylen Brown, we haven't talked about this yet on the show, played the entire playoffs with a partially torn meniscus. The guy's a warrior, and Brad Stevens, he took note of it. He said Jaylen's a warrior, and he also said Jaylen takes great pride in being out there. And at the same time, we also he obviously saw our team doctors and a couple other people, and as he even said a couple weeks ago, the knee's in a good place structurally. So I think he felt comfortable getting out there and going after it. And hopefully he'll feel better after being off it for a few weeks here. And Brad ended up going on in this statement saying that he does not expect surgery for Jaylen Brown in this torn meniscus, so something that's going to heal up naturally. I'm not the biggest knee doctor out there. If they believe that this is the best course of action for JB to not have this surgery and be ready to go for the first game of the 25-26 season, then I'm all for it every single time. And obviously, Brad Stevens did not address any possibility of Jaylen Brown not being on this roster. Everything that he said, everything that we've heard from Jaylen Brown to this point, very much signals that he is going to be the focal point of this team in the Jayson Tatum gap year that we're going to face in 25-26. So it seems like he is going to very, very much stay in Boston and be a huge contributor and the face of the franchise for at least the next 365. Brad said this about JB. He said, the reality is we have a ton of good players and everyone leans on. That said, Jaylen and Jayson have gotten the majority of attention because of how good they are. And I have full faith that any game that you have those guys out on the court or one of those guys out on the court, you have a great shot. And so I have full faith in Jaylen. Yep, like I just said, it sounds like Jaylen Brown will be the face of the Boston Celtics until Jayson Tatum returns and is back to the Jays, the mono-e-mono duo that everybody likes to rag on. But at the end of the day, they have a Larry, and a lot of y'all don't. Jaylen Brown, hopefully he can heal up quick and be as effective of a player as he was back in the 2024 finals, because 2024-25, it was a little bit of a step down for Jaylen Brown production-wise. Kristaps Porzingis, we got to talk about him as well. As just unfortunate, the mystery behind his illness that he was facing, dating all the way back to March, and then it creeped up back into the playoffs, as well as he was kind of turning the corner there over the latter half of the regular season. But once the playoffs came back, the illness got back into his system and really limited his playing abilities and his effectiveness overall out there on the court. Brad had this to say on KP. He said, "I don't think anyone was more frustrated than him. I felt for him because the way it was described to me was just post-viral symptoms, which is the lingering effects of a long illness. I think we've seen that and probably read too much about that over the last several years. I thought he had really turned the corner there toward the end of the regular season." And look, let's call a spade a spade. We know that Kristaps Porzingis' time in Boston very well might be coming to a close. He's a prime trade candidate, making $30.7 million next season on an expiring deal. And with Boston needing to get below that second apron, which we'll talk about more on the back half of today's show, he just seems like the odd man out with this whole scenario, and as does Drew Holiday, who we'll talk about further later. But Porzingis will be returning to basketball action this summer. Actually, he'll be playing in the Eurobasket come August and September for Latvia. So he fully plans on being back out there, and Brad Stevens said that he's sure that this illness and this mystery thing will be all cleared up by then, and he'll be in good shape. And it's good that he's going out there and playing for his country. And who knows, by the time that August or September ends up rolling around, Kristaps Porzingis might not longer be a member of the Boston Celtics at this point. But with all these injuries, clouding the Celtics postseason and into the offseason, let's send some good vibes. Let's manifest good health for the Boston Celtics real quick. If you want the Celtics to have good rest and recovery this offseason and you haven't already liked the video, go down below and do so. Every view that we get on this video, we should have that number in likes, because everybody should want the Celtics to have a rested and recovery-filled summer. Next, we're going to get into 3 more takeaways from Brad Stevens, a couple of quick hitters, and then we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into the Boston Celtics offseason coming up. But first, I got to give a huge shout-out to our sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports platform because it's daily fantasy made easy. Here's how it works. All you guys got to do is pick 2 to 6 players and just pick more or less on their projected stats, whether it's basketball, baseball, or hockey with the playoffs in full swing, or some other stuff like bowling, darts, or golf. They have it all on Prize Picks, and you can win up to 2,000 times your money. Prize Picks is awesome because they always want to make it easier for you guys to do so with deals like Taco Tuesday, where they discount stat projections, Flex Friday, where if you lose your lineup, they give it back to you in promo funds up to $20. And our special deal here at Chat Sports, promo code CLNS that gets you $50 instantly when you place your first $5 entry. The Eastern Conference Finals are coming up, and unfortunately, it does not include the Boston Celtics. But for Game 1, I have Jalen Brunson more than 28.5 points, Miles Turner more than 15.5 points, and then Josh Hart less than 12 points. You can tail my picks or fade them. Just make sure you go and do it at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use our promo code CLNS for $50 instantly when you place your first $5 entry. You don't need to win that entry to receive the $50. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. All that information will be clickable down in the comment section and description of today's video. All right, next Stevens presser takeaway is that Joe Mazzula is the guy. And this one is going to be short and sweet because, look, I'm not going to dive into all of the X's and O's. We could be here for hours if we really wanted to dive into game film and what Joe Mazzula could do better and what he could do worse potentially as the head coach. What we know is that Joe Mazzula has drawn a lot of criticism as a head coach, somebody who people view as a coattail rider of a stacked Celtics roster, and anybody could have won that title back in 2024, and he's drawing criticism from the Knicks series about the lack of timeout usage down the stretch, and we could get into all the nitty-gritty about that. Like, I could prove you guys wrong with whatever claim you want to throw out there about Joe Mazzula. The idea, though, is that the Celtics buy into the system. They play the system at a very high level, and what happened in the playoffs? They just ended up missing a lot of the open looks that they got, and they blew a couple of leads because of it, and the hole was dug too deep. They could not get out of it. What Brad says about Joe Mazzula is that he has full confidence. He said, Joe is great. Joe has done a great job. We're lucky that we have Joe here. We're lucky that we have the staff that we have here, and we're thankful. Doesn't seem like Joe Mazzula is going to be out of town anytime soon. Not only because Brad Stevens has big-time praise for him, but also because Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown also have big-time praise for Joe Mazzula. The entire Celtics roster, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Al Horford, they all love Joe Mazzula. They all rally around Joe Mazzula. They are inspired by him and his fiery attitude and his psychopathic coaching methods. Look, they have bought in completely. They have won a championship as a result of Joe Mazzula's coaching. And yes, you could argue that back in 2022, these guys were too young. They needed to lose to be able in order to win. But one coach didn't win the championship. One coach did. This one is going to be around for quite some time now because he's got a Larry. Next up on the Stevens presser takeaways is a Cooper Flagg trade. Might be a pipe dream, but it is at the end of the day very, very unlikely. Look, it's fun to speculate about this kind of thing. And look, as a Duke basketball fan growing up, I would love to have Cooper Flagg headed to Boston. I'm sure he would love that too as a Maine and New England native. And the Celtics did interview Cooper Flagg at the NBA Draft Combine. But again, this is not something that is likely to materialize anytime soon. The trade up to the number one pick, you're going to have to give up an absolute haul. And I'm not sure if the Celtics are going to be willing to do that. I'm not sure if the Mavericks are going to be willing to do that. Here's what Brad had to say about meeting with Flagg and others that are projected to go in the top of the draft. He said, the people we know we can't get into work out is how we decide who we want to talk to at the Combine. Otherwise, we may never get to talk to them again. As far as us and moving up to those levels in the draft, I would guess that is probably not on the table. Unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes. Like Dallas, they've already made it very clear that they aren't going to be in the business of moving the number one pick. If I'm the Boston Celtics, of course I would make a call to the Dallas Mavericks to try to trade for Cooper Flagg. You got to give up a plethora of assets, basically every first-round pick in your treasure trove, and impact players like Jaylen Brown, and then you got to worry about salary coming back. It's a hefty price tag for the Boston Celtics. It could pay off, and Cooper Flagg could end up being a top 10 player in this league and be able to be the best duo in the NBA with Jayson Tatum. The issue is we already might have the best duo in the NBA with Tatum and Brown, and Dallas probably will not pick up the phone. They have shown no inclination at all to be willing to trade the number one pick. They've said that they're keeping it, and who knows if they'd even want to gut their roster to send out the salary that would be needed to match a Jaylen Brown contract just in order to get him into town and try to win a championship when Kyrie Irving's not even going to be out there for most of the season. Next and final Stevens presser takeaway is that this is a pivotal offseason ahead. A lot of uncertainty has now just crept into the Boston Celtics franchise after losing Jayson Tatum for what looks like to be 18 months. So now the Celtics, at this point, have some decisions to make about their roster. But Brad Stevens was pretty coy and a little bit defensive and deflective about the prospect of making legitimate specific moves. He said, I know there will be a lot of questions about what's next, but I'll probably talk more about that at the draft time when we have a better idea after meeting with all the key stakeholders and everyone else about what those next steps might be. Those next steps are going to include cutting costs. You guys saw this graphic that I put up on screen in yesterday's show, where the Celtics are $25 million over the second apron, which means they face a tax penalty of $270 million, paying $500 million for just a $230 million roster. That just doesn't seem like good business to me, and it doesn't seem like the Celtics are going to be contending next season truly to win the championship. Look, they could absolutely get a 94-95 Bulls type of scenario where they go out there and win 50 games. But a year without Jayson Tatum kind of feels like a gap year. Like, whether or not they make the playoffs, like, do we really believe they're going to be able to stack up with OKC, Minnesota? I mean, who knows how much better Denver's going to get, wherever Giannis ends up going. I mean, the teams in the East like the Cavs or the Knicks or the Pacers, like, is the Celtics team led by Jaylen Brown minus Jayson Tatum but still having his salary on the books, not being able to use any of that salary on any effective pieces around the roster? I'm not so sure that's going to be championship level next season, and unfortunately that means this might be a gap year, and we can kind of reset and recalibrate for 26-27. Multiple big rotation pieces for the Boston Celtics very well may be moved. Like we mentioned earlier, Kristaps Porzingis, prime trade candidate. Drew Holiday, prime trade candidate. Other names in the Celtics rotation as well that make even less than the $30 million that those two guys make could be on the block as well. Brad said this about the impending moves that they may have to make. He said, we've been talking about this for years. The CBA has been well known for years, and so there are penalties associated with being at certain levels. And we know that. And just weigh that, you weigh where we are, weigh everything else, and you make those decisions. You have to have the clarity of a full season and the full playoffs and a couple good nights of sleep, and everyone gets in a room and puts their heads together and figures out what's next. What's next is one of these three guys is going to have to be on the block, and one of these three guys, or maybe multiple, or maybe all three of them might not be wearing Celtic green in 2025-26. Holiday makes $32 million. Porzingis makes $31 million. Hauser makes $10 million, but that $10 million eats up a lot more than you guys think when it comes to luxury tax penalties, and it's a very movable deal when it comes to matching salaries. So these three guys might not be wearing Celtic green next year, especially when you consider you can insert Baylor Shireman into the minutes that Sam Hauser plays. More from Brad here. He says the North Star is to have a championship contender. You have to do what's best to give yourself in the best opportunity to do that. When you can do that, we just have to look at all and decide how feasible that is on any given year, and then we make sure we're making the decisions accordingly. But the reality is, like I said, we have a lot of good players. We're in a unique situation. They're all under contract, and obviously there are several basketball penalties that will come with that amount of salary. So we just have to weigh it all and make those decisions. It sucks, man. Like, I wanted this core to be around for 3, 4, 5 years altogether, but thanks, CJ McCollum, the CBA will not let that happen. Whatever happens with the Boston Celtics, I believe in Brad Stevens. He has made moves to build this roster to this point that nobody else has made. He went out there and got Derek White for a bag of chips. He went out there and got the low-hanging fruit in Drew Holiday when he was just away in Portland and nobody else wanted to go out there and make a deal after Milwaukee traded for Damian Lillard. He went out there and got Kristaps Porzingis, who's withering away in Washington, basically having an all-star season, and they win a championship as a result. This is a lot of uncertainty ahead for the Boston Celtics. I don't know if they're going to win a championship next year. I don't know if they'll win a championship the year after that. But whatever happens with this franchise, if Brad Stevens is at the helm, then I 100% am in full belief. If you believe in Brad Stevens one more time, hit that like button. If everything I've said to this point hasn't convinced you, then I guess we never will. If you believe in Brad Stevens, hit the thumbs up icon, like today's video, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. YouTube.com/CelticsTV with whatever news that we get all offseason long and whatever rumors pop up as well. We will be covering them right here at Celtics Today. So lock us in as #1 source for Celtics content on YouTube. We'll see you guys all in the next one. And as always, let's go C's.